We got two really good 4A sectionals. Let's start with 4A sectional 19. Wawasee at Angola, DeKalb at Northwood, Northridge at Culver Academy, and East Noble at Plymouth. We'll just start off at the top. Angola 9-0, undefeated in the regular season. The offense is really humming. What can they do to not only win against Wawasee, but earn themselves a trip maybe to the conference or the sectional championship? Because they'll take on the DeKalb Northwood winner. Right now, Angola is given a 35% chance to win that sectional. Northwood's given a 35% chance to win that sectional. Angola 20% based on Harold's predictions.
They're on the right half of the bracket. They're on the top. They get Wawasee and then Northwood, a Northwood team that represented the North in 4A last year. The Northwood 6-3, so you think that's manageable, but their 3 losses have come against teams that combine 22-5, and I know that because I looked it up right before I came over here. So I'm smart. I know. So I was doing research for a story later this week, and I know that off the top of my head, not because I'm smart, but just because I looked it over. But Northwood, they lose to Northridge and a couple other competitive losses. I think they lost to Warsaw a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, lost to Warsaw in a tight one.
Yeah, and undefeated. I think it's Concord beat them. I think maybe. I mean, so. You likely have to play Northwood next week, and you're looking at Angola, very successful 9-0 season, but this sectional is absolutely brutal. And you look at strength of schedule, Angola 170th. Now, they beat Leo, beat Jimtown, 2 good wins, but by and large, they don't play the kind of schedule that a lot of other teams in 4A play. So that's the only kind of warning sign for me, particularly in such a brutal, brutal sectional field.
The one thing that raises a flag for me is if they do end up playing Northwood, and DeKalb's, kind of found the pieces in the right spot. They've got their quarterback in position. Gobel's been running behind defenses like crazy. So I think on paper that game looks lopsided, but maybe DeKalb gives them a good game in that one. Northwood, when they lost to Warsaw, it was Warsaw running the ball. 2 guys went over 100 yards. They kept control of the clock, and they kept the ball on the ground. Not that Angola can't do that, but we've seen Chance Roddy more so move the football with Sean Miller and with McCurdy through the air this season. Is that because you can't eat up as much clock perhaps that way? Does that concern you at all if you're Angola?
Yeah, a little bit, but I think Angola's done a great job in adjusting to who they play. And if a team takes away the run, they go through the pass, and vice versa. I mean, they're very versatile offensively. Now, are they versatile enough to go on the road and beat a Northwood team that they're probably going to have to score into the 30s to win? I'm not sure, but first things first, I think a very winnable game for Angola against Wawasee this week. Maybe they get some help from DeKalb. I don't know, but at least the majority of those tough teams are beating each other up in the bottom part of that bracket.
Let's talk a little bit about the other half of that bracket. East Noble at Plymouth is really the game I want to focus on because this is a game we saw in week 1 where the teams are, I don't want to say totally different, but obviously you're just kind of feeling your way through, especially a team like East Noble who lost guys like Dylan Hunley and other quality players to graduation. That was a 4-point game at Plymouth. They returned to the scene of the crime at the rock pile. How do you see this one going? Because obviously East Noble has fine-tuned their offense a little bit more than we saw in week 1.
I like East Noble here just because it's very difficult for me to believe that a Luke Amstutz coach team is going to lose to a team twice in one season with the teams as comparable as East Noble and Plymouth. I think they were surprised a little bit week 1. I think with what happened in the sectional last year and beating Plymouth, they felt they could go in there and handle business, and they didn't. And I think that put them on notice, got their attention, and they put together a pretty successful season since. So I like East Noble's chances going in there, like you mentioned, really getting stronger on both sides of the ball coming in here, and I think the Knights win on Friday.
The one thing I looked back at those week 1 stats, and the one thing that jumped out to me is East Noble rushed for only 117 yards, and Andrew McCormick threw 2 interceptions.
Yes.
That's not East Noble football. I mean, they can be fast first, but 117 yards seems pretty low. Nobody went over 50 for East Noble in that week 1 game against Plymouth. I would think they have to run the ball and not turn it over. Those would be 2 things Luke Amstutz would stress this week.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think, particularly on the ground, because I don't think we've seen East Noble really gain their traction much on the ground. When they really need to move the ball, they've done it vertically a lot, or with Andrew McCormick getting outside the pocket. So it'd be interesting to see if they can get that run game going.
Harold, as I mentioned, says Northwood is the team to beat. They give them a 35% chance in the sectional. Do you see that playing out?
I do. Yeah, I do think they're the team to beat. Now, I think there are 2 or 3 teams that are capable of clipping them in that sectional, but I do like Northwood. You look at their record, 6-3, not spectacular, but that's a battle-tested team. They went to state championship game last year. They started number 1 this year, I believe, or at least towards the top. So I think they're definitely the favorite.